We're with Peter Jacob, who's running for Congress as a Democrat in New Jersey's 7th District. Peter, can you tell us why you're running for Congress?
Sure. First, I want to say it's a pleasure to be here and have this opportunity. I'm running for U.S. Congress based on my experiences that I've had as a social worker. As a social worker, I've seen the challenges firsthand. I've met the families who are homeless, at risk of being homeless, who have lost their jobs, had to work 2-3 jobs just to make ends meet. I've served the veterans who are jobless, homeless, suffering with PTSD, who served our country, and we offer it to them to serve them in return. I met the senior citizens who had to choose between food and medication. And basically, what I have seen is the need for people who are uniquely qualified. Right now in Congress, we have an overwhelming amount of attorneys and businessmen, and where has that nexus gotten us? And I believe the 21st century requires 21st century solutions. And as a social worker, I bring a unique perspective to the challenges we face today.
Okay, a little bit more on your personal background. You mentioned you were a social worker. Your website also touts the fact that you've been a community organizer. Can you tell us a little bit about that for people who may not be familiar with some of the work you've done?
Sure. I began my activism as a college student throughout graduate school, and right over here as a community organizer here in Elizabeth, New Jersey. I work to bring together a coalition of churches, schools, various organizations, and individuals to answer the challenges of homelessness. We were able to partner up by providing a winter shelter program to individuals who are chronically homeless, provide a structure in their lives where they were able to get the benefits that they deserved, as well as getting them jobs and housing needs, and answering all those questions that they found difficult just navigating the system on their own.
Okay, let's talk a little bit about the upcoming election. You're running against Leonard Lance. He's a incumbent who's been here for a number of terms. He's moved somewhat to the right since he's been in Congress, but he seems to keep getting reelected. What's your path to beat Mr. Lance?
So when I've been thinking about this for the past 2 years, running for public office, and I believe Congress was the right office to run for. I've been able to tap into a progressive base of people here, and in the meantime, we've been able to communicate with people along the whole spectrum of things: Democrats, Republicans, unaffiliated voters, and all of them have the same response, and they're very unhappy with the way things are. Lance is towing the party line as it moves into further partisanship and extremism. Many people have told me they liked him when he was in the state legislature. He was a pretty moderate guy. But now the issues that are really concerning people of the 7th District, he is paying no mind to. What has he done for the 7th District lately? And it is not much.
So you tout yourself as a progressive, but this is a very diverse district, ranging from very liberal to where we are right now in Union, all the way out to the western part of the state, which is somewhat conservative. How do you appeal to a broad range of folks like that?
And it's exactly what we've been doing. We've been talking about the values and issues that are important to people, not the labels, not if you're man, woman, Democrat, Republican, Libertarian, whatever it is. We talk about the issues. When we go door to door, I'm surprised to run into Democrats who tell me that, hey, I'm voting Republican now, because they are so disenchanted with the way the system is running. And after having just a few minutes of communication with them to talk to them about what do you care about, what's the issues that are important to you, and we get to notice that, hey, we have common ground here. We in New Jersey, no matter where we're from, we have some particular concerns, and that those are the concerns we want to address. And we need leaders who are going to listen to people. As a social worker, I listen to people. And after listening to them, we design interventions. We look at what the challenges they have, and we work together to come along with solutions. And I think as a congressperson, as a public official, those are important skill sets to have. You have to listen to your constituency, and you have to create unique legislation based on the needs of a district, a state, and the nation as a whole.
So if you're elected, you'll be a Democrat in what's most likely still going to be a Republican Congress, and you'll be a freshman, which is probably not a very powerful position. So you won't be able to tackle a lot of issues. What would be your priorities, 1 or 2 priorities, if you were elected and in the minority in Congress?
You're exactly right. You have to work your way up. I think I would list three issues that are very important to people in our district. I think jobs and economy is a very important thing as I speak to people. And the reason jobs and economy is important, if you bring it to taxation, the fact that we do not see a return on our investment here. According to the Star Ledger, NJ.com, 7 of the 11 worst bridges are right here in our 7th Congressional District. We need to reinvest in our infrastructure. You have all these potholes, all these bridges, our infrastructure in general is being outdated. And that ties into environment and energy. In Hunterdon County, there's a plan to run a pipeline, another natural gas pipeline by Penn East. And everyone I've spoken to, whether a Republican or Democrat, strongly opposes this. Why do we need another gas pipeline when we have one of the leading solar integrators right here in the district? In fact, if we look at Duke Farms, who utilizes a lot of clean energy, renewable energy options, we are making it happen here. So we need to bring that type of money, that type of investment. We need to create those type of jobs in our 7th Congressional District. And I think pushing for that, bringing that type of monies over here. We were innovators at one point here in New Jersey. Thomas Edison, a pioneer in energy, and we could do it. We could do that again, and we could be proud to call the Garden State green.
Okay. Let's talk about some other tough issues that you might be facing in Congress. It seems that nowadays Congress is pretty split on the issue of gun safety. The Second Amendment people versus the people who think that maybe things like Sandy Hook are related to gun control. Where do you stand on that? What's a reasonable approach to bring these groups together?
Certainly. I take a very common sense, practical approach to this. I respect the Second Amendment. But at the same time, we have to have a real conversation around this, and we are neglecting to do that. I think what Leonard Lance and other Republicans have done is distract the conversation and talk about mental health. Now, mental health is very important. We need great investment. I know firsthand as someone who's worked in mental health for the past 3 years. But when we talk about mental health, when it comes to gun violence, we are essentially ignoring what the actual issue is. And I think when we talk about mental illness, when we talk about gun violence, we're insulting those who suffer from mental illness, the families of the victims of gun violence, as well as those who work with those individuals. So we have to bring back the conversation, because the reality is less than 5% of gun violence incidences are committed by those who suffer from a mental illness. And that does make a big number of people. So we need common sense legislation that people, all the people, even members of the NRA are behind. We need instant background checks. We need to close the loopholes, just putting common sense standards in place. But I think even more important than that is we need a socio-cultural evolution in this country where people could feel safe without guns. When I speak to people, friends and family, who mention to me, "Oh, I'm thinking about getting a gun," and I ask them, "Well, why?" And their automatic response, and first and perhaps only response most of the time, is to feel safe. How do we create a society where we feel safe without guns? Well, we need to ensure what I call the Commonwealth. People need to have jobs. People need to make a livable wage. People need healthcare and education. If we could ensure this Commonwealth, then we would alleviate the need to have guns at all in a society and reduce the crime rate, essentially.
And that's somewhat related to the drug epidemic that we have in this country. As a social worker, you've probably seen people OD on drugs and addicts. How do we address that issue?
First and foremost, the national conversation now is gravitating towards treatment rather than criminalization. I think that is the most important thing that we need to do, and start thinking about drugs in that manner. Many people know somebody who suffers from mental illness the same way they know somebody who suffers from cancer, in the same way they know people who suffer from addiction issues. So we need to invest more in addiction, less in the criminalization of addiction. We need greater education, prevention first as a method.
Would you support federal legalization of marijuana?
I do support federal legalization of marijuana. I think in an economic way that makes a lot of sense. I think as it's classified and understood as a drug, it is not in the case of when you compare it to other hard drugs.
Another pressing issue that will come to bear, especially for you in this campaign, is campaign finance reform. You're going to have to raise a lot of money, obviously, to beat an entrenched incumbent. But looking at the big picture, there have been people who have said we need a constitutional amendment to get rid of Citizens United. That would take some time. Are there any other thoughts that you might have to make elections a little bit more accessible to people like yourself who may not have a lot of money or big corporate donors?
First, let me talk with regards to Citizens United campaign finance reform. That is the moral issue of our generation. The other issues that we have discussed, environment, energy, jobs, economy, with regards to how we treat addiction and guns, we cannot answer any of these questions unless we have campaign finance reform. I think, it's going to be an arduous process to have a constitutional amendment. I do support the Move to Amend movement that is going on nationally. But I think in the interim, what we can do is support, and I'm a big supporter of Represents Us, their proposition that they put forward, the American Anti-Corruption Act, which basically addresses, making all donations transparent. You have these 501c4s that have the dark money that exists out there, closing the revolving door. We need public financing of elections. I do like what has been put forward by the Fair Elections Now Act. But I think ultimately what we see Leonard Lance doing, he sits on the Energy and Commerce Committee. And his top 3 contributors are the pharmaceutical, fossil fuel, and telecom industries. You cannot represent the people if you take money from the interests that you regulate. That's a complete conflict of interest. And let's not sugarcoat it and call it lobbying. Let's call it what it is. It's basically bribery.
Okay. You talked a little bit about the bridge and tunnel infrastructure. I want to look at the broader picture of transportation as a whole, including rail, autonomous vehicles. Where should this country be going in order to use the transportation infrastructure to prime the economy?
There's a saying that progress is not when a poor man buys a car, but when a rich man uses public transportation. And we need to heavily invest in our transportation system. You could see that they're outdated, especially in a heavily commuter area that we live in here in Union. And in fact, all throughout, there's people in Hunterdon County who take public transportation to go into New York and this area for work. We need to invest in cleaner, safer, more advanced technologies that make things comfortable. Other nations are doing it, they're on top of it, and we need to reinvest in things like that.
Okay. Another issue that's in the news these days is security versus privacy. The Apple case, where the FBI is now saying they've found somebody who's going to break into that iPhone from the San Bernardino terrorist, is just kind of the tip of the iceberg. How do we ensure people's privacy and at the same time ensure that our law enforcement people are getting the information that they need to prevent another 9/11 or another Brussels?
To answer with regards to what happened with Apple, I think the moment we sacrifice our security, we do sacrifice our liberty. But how do we get to that fine line where those things overlap and it's fair and equal for all people involved, all stakeholders? Because this affects all of us. Security is a major issue in our nation at this point. But what Tim Cook has basically said is we do not want to open up Pandora's door and have it lead into something that we cannot take back at the end. Once they do put out software like that, it just enables anybody to get access to it. I think cybersecurity is a major issue in this country with regards to national threats, whether coming from North Korea, China, place like that. We need to invest in people who are well qualified and skilled to work in these fields to address this. And we need to update our infrastructure that we have both on a digital level and as a physical level to prevent these cyber threats.
Final issue is another one that seems to be polarizing in Washington, and that's immigration reform. And there's really two aspects to that, is how do we treat the people who are here that are undocumented, and how do we treat future immigration as people want to come to the U.S.?
And immigration is a personal subject to me. You know, my family, they came here in 1986, and when they came here, they just had three things: $20 in their pockets, hearts full of hope, and me in their arms. They're able to set up a successful small family business, put their children through college, buy a beautiful home, and you could say we live the American dream. I don't think anybody's talking about how we treat immigration of new people coming in, but if you've been in this country, you know, you served this country, you lived here, you made a contribution, then you deserve to stay here. Immigrants built the United States, and if you're here and you have a dream, you deserve the American dream, essentially.
Okay. Peter, thank you. Can you tell us if people want to find out more information or volunteer for your campaign, where should they go?
Sure. In order to get involved, which we need more people to do, you can visit www.peterforcongress.com. You could also check out my Facebook page at facebook.com/PeterJacob2016 and twitter.com/PeterJacob2016. At my website, you could sign up for email updates, and you could sign up to volunteer and get involved. We need people out in the streets. You know, democracy is about the people. Democracy is not a noun, it's a verb. We have to get out, get involved. Come join us in this great movement right here in the 7th District.
Peter, thank you very much for speaking with us.
Pleasure's mine. Thank you.